All right, welcome back, A-level students. Let's get absolutely straight down to business today. We are building a super streamlined, high-yield study guide that's practically guaranteed to help you lock down those A-star marks in your OCR Paper 1 exam. In this explainer, we're taking on families and relationships. Now, you and I both know it's a completely massive topic, but we're going to cut right through the noise. We'll give you exactly the stats, the facts, and the theories you actually need to crush it.
Think of this as our mental map for today's revision session. We'll kick things off with the big three theories, move on to cohabitation stats, hit the divorce statistics, and then tie it the whole shebang together with securing A-star exam analysis.
Okay, Section 1, the big three theories. Let's just dive right into this theoretical battleground. You absolutely cannot write a top-end essay without these foundational lenses.
I want you to keep this central question right in the back of your mind as we go through the evidence today. Is the nuclear family dead or just evolving? Because honestly, that is exactly the type of 40-mark essay prompt you're going to face. Every single piece of theory and data we cover from here on out, that's your ammunition for answering this specific question.
Let's start by pitting the really big hitters against each other. You've got functionalism offering this very rose-tinted view of the family. You absolutely need to know Murdoch, who argued the nuclear family is universal and does 4 totally vital things: sexual, economic, reproduction, and education. And then there's Parsons, right? He narrowed it down for industrial society to just the primary socialization of children and the stabilization of adult personalities. You know, that famous warm bath theory. But then, you contrast that directly with Marxism's conflict-driven lens. Engels and Zaretsky argue the family is literally just an ideological conditioning device. For Zaretsky, the family props up capitalism by socializing kids to accept authority, making it this vital unit of consumption. It's a completely different worldview.
But what if the core conflict isn't just about class? What if it's about gender? Building on that conflict theory, feminism breaks down into 4 distinct branches you really must be able to pull apart in the exam. You've got liberal feminists, like Somerville, taking a March of Progress view, pointing out more choice and freedom for women nowadays. Then, Marxist feminists, like Benston, argue it's women's unpaid domestic labor that truly keeps capitalism afloat. Radical feminists such as Delphi and Leonard go further. They see the family as a core unit of patriarchal control that exploits women's work. And crucially, we cannot forget intersectional feminism. Hill Collins rightly points out that earlier feminisms totally ignored the black experience. She argues that for many ethnic minorities, the family is actually a safe haven from a deeply racist society.
When you're trying to mentally map all this out for quick recall in the exam hall, anchoring these specific names is a total game changer. Think about thinkers like Zaretsky, Benston, and Ansley. Ansley has that incredibly blunt description of wives as the takers of completely unacceptable behavior, basically absorbing the hit when men take out their capitalist frustrations at home. Bringing up those specific names and precise concepts, that's exactly what elevates a B-grade answer into an A-star.
Moving on to Section 2, Key Trends in Cohabitation Stats. Let's transition from pure theory to the hard demographic data the OCR mark schemes are begging for.
You're going to want to lock these key demographics right into your memory. You simply must be able to cite that cohabitation is the fastest growing family type in the UK, clocking in at over 3.6 million couples. But here is the real analytical so what. Why is it growing? Are people just totally rejecting marriage? Well, not necessarily. This is where you drop Coast's 2006 study, which found that 75% of cohabitant couples actually expect to marry each other eventually. It perfectly backs up Chester's idea that cohabitation is often just a trial marriage rather than some total abandonment of tradition.
And to put that changing tradition into perspective, consider the massive impact of secularization and shifting social attitudes. Back in 1981, 60% of weddings took place in a church. Fast forward to 2012, and that number plummeted to just 30%. That sharp drop in religious marriages shows you exactly how the fading influence of religion, combined with a massive decline in the social stigma surrounding premarital sex, has completely rewired how couples formalize their relationships.
All right, Section 3, Key Trends, Divorce Statistics. Continuing our deep dive into the data, we really need to apply our analytical skills to marital breakdown. Because if the nuclear family is evolving, divorce is a colossal part of that story.
To snatch those top marks here, you have to link the legislative trigger of the 1971 Divorce Reform Act directly to our modern demographic reality. That specific act widened the grounds for divorce to the irretrievable breakdown of marriage. And pay close attention to the gender dynamics here. 65% of divorce petitions now come from women. Compare that to just 37% way back in 1946. This is literally the perfect place to weave in your feminist theories about women's increasing financial independence and their flat-out refusal to accept patriarchal constraints anymore.
I just want to pause for a second and let this heavy statistic truly land. Today, approximately 40% of all marriages end in divorce. 40%? That is an absolutely staggering shift from just a few generations ago.
So, the absolutely critical point for your exam is explaining the why behind that 40% figure. You can't just drop the stat, you've got to unpack it. This is where you bring in Ronald Fletcher's concept of higher expectations of marriage. People just don't marry solely for economic security anymore. They expect deep intimacy, romance, and love. And when that fades, they leave. Combine that with Mitchell and Goody's point about the rapid decline in social stigma, add in secularization, factor in women's increased financial independence, and boom, you have a bulletproof paragraph explaining the modern divorce rate.
Finally, Section 4, Securing A-star Exam Analysis. For this last part, we're going to look at exactly how to synthesize the theories and the data we've discussed to completely ace the critical evaluation component of your exams. This is where you prove to the examiner you deeply understand late modernity.
You'll want to introduce heavy-hitting postmodern thinkers like Ulrich Beck. Beck argues we now live in what he calls a risk society, completely characterized by massive individualization. We are constantly weighing up the pros and cons of our decisions to protect ourselves, right? He famously coined the term the zombie family. It might look alive from the outside, but it is fundamentally dead on the inside. Why? Because it can no longer provide that absolute, unconditional security it once did, since individuals are constantly putting their own needs first.
Similarly, you can contrast traditional marital duty with Anthony Giddens' brilliant concepts of confluent love and the pure relationship. Giddens argues that today we only stay in relationships for as long as they are emotionally fulfilling. We simply don't stick around out of a rigid sense of duty, or just for the sake of the children, or because of some religious obligation. We stay because our personal needs are being met, and the moment they aren't, the relationship is over. It perfectly explains the soaring divorce and cohabitation rates we were just talking about.
Think of these concepts as your ultimate cheat sheet for late modernity. Notice how seamlessly Giddens and Beck link directly to all those demographic changes. Their theories of individualization flawlessly explain trends like women delaying childbearing to focus on careers, the huge rise of singlehood, and just the generally fluid nature of modern families. My biggest tip? Whenever you bring up a demographic trend in your exam, always tie it back to these theoretical frameworks.
We're going to wrap up with this ultimate essay prompt. It challenges you to synthesize everything we've covered today into one critical, high-scoring argument. Are we truly seeing radical diversity, just like postmodernists like Stacy suggest? Or, as Chester argues with his idea of the neo-conventional family, are most people really still aspiring to a dual-earner nuclear family lifestyle at some point? Think about how those stats on cohabitation leading to marriage totally support Chester, while a 40% divorce rate definitely bolsters back in Giddens. How are you going to build your argument? Master these links, synthesize the data with the theory, and I promise you that A-star is yours. Good luck with your revision.